So welcome back to week 3 and the segment Guerrilla Marketing and the Marketing Mix. Today's session is essentially about implementation of your marketing strategy, and that's also why I'm wearing my vest, in order to signal to you that this is a hands-on subject that we're going to be talking about today, and that it actually should be aligned with the strategy that we have developed in the previous sessions, meaning segmentation of your market and how your customers should perceive your product, i.e. the positioning of your product vis-a-vis the competition towards your customers. And these two decisions on the strategic level really form the backbone for what we will be discussing today, because they should give you the guidelines, the general thrust for what you will be implementing in the marketing mix. There are more creative elements that you can also use in entrepreneurial marketing. We label them guerrilla marketing, like a guerrilla fighter who's fighting with little resources and tries to achieve maximum output or maximum effects, and that's actually the situation that an entrepreneur finds himself in. So what we will be discussing is also some tools and tricks that you can apply in order to have very efficient type of marketing in new venture creation, and I have some very interesting, nice examples to share with you. So when we think about the marketing mix, conventionally there were 4 P's: price, product, promotion, place. And this has been enlarged to 7 P's in more recent editions of this concept. And let me briefly walk you through an overview here and then focus on each and every one of them. So the marketing mix is really concerned with the implementation, as I just said. So it's about how your product will be designed. It's about the pricing of your product. It's about the place, meaning the distribution of your product. It's about the promotional elements that accompany your marketing effort. It's about the process. It's about the people. And it's also about the physical environment, which is oftentimes referring to the store environment in which you may sell your goods. Each of these elements has a couple of decision points to them. And as you see already by looking at the name of these elements, this is really hands-on, as I said. So let's walk you through some of these decision points and what you can possibly do about the product, price, place, etc. What are common fallacies? What are common recommendations in that sense? But let me also stress that at the end of the day, these all need to form a coherent view. This needs to be coherently designed so that the customer ultimately will see this as a product offering with the right price that is distributed through those distribution chains that are most appealing to this to your customer target market, etc., etc. So let's move through this one by one. So one core element that is essential in the entrepreneurial marketing approach is, of course, the price you set. How much would a customer have to pay for your offering? And this is a vital consideration to the customer, because this determines whether he or she wants to buy the good. But it's also vital to you as an entrepreneurial company, because the price the customer pay and how many customers will find that product attractive at that price will determine your cash flows, and that determines, of course, whether you as a company can survive. So the pricing decision is one that is extremely vital. There are also some problems that are associated with that, because it's not so easy to determine the right price. Oftentimes, approach that is recommended is that you want to start with understanding how valuable this product is to your customer. That means how the value that you're creating for your customer. And that can be a starting point. And then you can say, okay, this is my cost level, and this is the value I render to my customer. Somewhere in between should be the optimal price. Cost plus pricing is also oftentimes done, which means you have your costs and you add something on top of your cost, let's say 20%. Is this a good way of pricing? Think about it. It's not, because the customer might get much more value out of your good than what your cost base are plus these 20%. So you're leaving money on the table constantly, and which means, the value accrues not to you but to your marketplace, which is nice for the marketplace, but hey, you want to create a company that is successful and grows. So in that sense, there are a couple of key issues that you can walk through. We have provided some backup material on our website that you can refer to in order to understand what is skimming pricing, penetration pricing, psychological pricing, etc. We do not have the time in this segment to to walk you through each of these elements. But let me just point out one key question, which is the question that you should have in the back of your mind, which the question, which price actually maximizes long-term profits? This is, of course, an issue that has to do with the segmentation positioning. I think this is evident. It's the strategic guidelines. But there's also some psychological effects. Your business model has some implications. The competition, now or later. Think about the markets you're in. Oftentimes these are dynamic markets, so more and more companies will enter those domains. And, of course, the customer's perceived benefit. That's what I exactly refer to when you talked about value-based pricing. And also the price elasticity, which means, if I change my prices for a certain percentage, like let's say 5% higher, how many more customers would actually buy my product, or how many customers I would lose that way? If you have a luxury good, maybe increasing the price might make it more attractive. And thinking about pricing, take into account that there are also options where you actually give the product away for free. There's a freemium pricing model where you have, for instance, a plain vanilla version of your product that is given away for free. And then you have a sophisticated version that allows professionals to do many more things with your product and for which you're going to charge a certain price. This is oftentimes a pricing model that is useful for those markets where you want to achieve rapid penetration. And of course, if a product is free, there are some advantages in terms of penetration. And this is one real example that a company that did that brilliantly. It's Adobe. They had the Acrobat Reader that was given out for free. Many of you probably use it. And then there's the Acrobat Distiller and other versions that are sold and where the company actually makes a profit. Another wonderful example about pricing is provided by Nespresso. You may know the coffee capsules by this company that is actually owned by Nestle, which is a company just down the road here from Lausanne, where I'm based. And what they are doing is actually quite smart, because if you think about it, Nespresso relies on the customers having coffee machines that are compatible with their capsules, and it relies on the sales of the capsules. So they could say, well, we price the coffee machines highly, and then we are profiting from their sales. But that might hurt or hinder people actually from buying the coffee machines, and that will then hinder the people from actually using and buying the capsules. So in that sense, in order to enter the market and penetrate the market, it's of vital importance to them to keep the price of the coffee machine low. So they have very low profit margins on those, but they have much higher profit margins than on the capsules that are repeatedly sold. And some estimates say it's up to 85% of profit margin on a coffee capsule, which is amazing. Okay, so this is another interesting example on that front. The second key element that is of importance here is the product. The product has a number of decision dimensions that you need to think about in your marketing mix. It's about the design, it's about the technology that goes inside, the quality, its packaging, and a couple of others. But these are oftentimes the four most important ones. Of course, these need to fit the overall strategy, meaning your target customers and how they should perceive you and your product vis-a-vis the competition's product. So more concretely, this means, if you have your target market segment would be affluent people, and you're trying to produce a product that is on the luxury segment, of course, this has to be visible in its design, in its quality, in the packaging of your good. Otherwise, if your packaging is a cheap type of packaging, there's cognitive dissonance on part of the customers, and they might not say, well, this is a product that actually fits my needs, and they would not consider buying it. So this has to fit with the segmentation and positioning too. The third element is promotion. What is important here to understand is promotion is not just advertising, it's many different things, and we listed them here. It's advertising, of course, but it's also having special offers. It's direct mailing. It's maybe free gifts, it's leaflets, it's other things that you might want to engage in order to actually promote your product. So there are multiple ways of promoting your product. Think about it maybe in that way. They say, okay, I want to transport a message to you, my potential customers. And there are multiple ways of getting this message across, and advertising is just one of them. So that guy with the loudspeaker might be another option, but free gifts might be also another. A coffee mug with the branding on it, and if if you're, for instance, selling office goods and they have this coffee mug in their office with a brand of that company providing office goods, that's all day long on their desk, and they see this logo a couple of times each day. Their colleagues see this logo. So of course these people are more aware of your company and the products they offer than other people's companies where they are not on the desk so often. And then there's another form of promotions that is quite essential to many startup firms. It's public relations. This is a low-cost alternative, meaning you don't spend much money on that. It's perceived typically as advertising that is not being paid for by the company. For instance, press releases, so you have a reporter reporting about your innovation. And that's actually often something that the reporters would like to engage in. They're in search for good stories as well. So if you have a good story to tell with your product, why not approach newspapers and press agencies to talk about your product? And they might advertise it that way in their article for free. It's an important way to build trust because it's an outside party reporting about your company. It increases awareness and it could signal potential for the future. So when you think about public relations and the way you're going to transport your message through PR, think also about the different types of people out there who could be more or less helpful in transporting that message. There are some people out there who have 2 million Twitter followers, while others have only a dozen. And of course the ones who have 2 million would be better in transporting PR than the ones with a couple of leads only. So we typically say there are some gurus out there, key people in the market, some authorities who can influence many others. Then there are some influencers, maybe some industry peers, experts, opinion leaders, key customers. And then there are some additional decision makers who get their messages either directly from you with the PR or are shaped by what the gurus and the influencers think. So there are oftentimes companies in an industry who look up to other companies and say these other companies are leading in terms of technology, in terms of customer approaches, in terms of their products, and we closely follow what they are doing and then mimic what they are doing. So that's exactly what I want to stress here. Try to get the gurus and influencers to talk about your company, and then these guys will relate the message in addition to what your efforts are. But also think about what these guys would take away from doing that. Maybe they only want to have an interesting story. Maybe they want to have other types of benefits that are related to that. Another element is the place, i.e. where can the product be bought? This is a key element for marketing, market entry and penetration. And it actually means the distribution channel that you're going to adopt. Is it retail? Is it wholesale? Maybe mail order, internet, direct sales, peer-to-peer, maybe multi-channel approaches. Whatever you decide, you make sure that you are targeting with your distribution channel exactly the segment that you want to address, so that you do not, some segments actually have preferences for one or the other channel. So find out where they buy and how often they buy, if they would like to prefer buying the good maybe in a different way. It's not said that if they keep on buying in a retail store that they would not be willing and able to switch to online buying, for instance. Another key element are the people. These are your employees. It's you as the management. It's the culture of your company. Because all of this will shape interaction with your customers. It will shape the impression that customers have of your company. And it will shape how the customer service is actually executed, how customers will deal with your company. And if you think about that, that's actually of vital importance, because that shapes the customer's experience. They will come back if they are happy with your company, if they think you are doing it a professional job, but they won't come back if you lose out on the customer service. So make sure that the people dimension is one that you take into consideration, because it has a lot to do with a solid implementation of your marketing mix. And then 2 more points. One is the process. The process element is often of high relevance for more service-oriented ventures. Think about how the customer would consume your service. But it also can be relevant to product-related purchases, because you might have warranty issues, you might have other interlinkages with your company. on the website, etc. So the process dimension is also one that you might want to consider on that front. And finally, it's also about the physical environment. That means the environment in which the customer consumes the service or gets in touch with your company to purchase a product, or both. Think about the interface that is created by your company to have the customer on the site in a store. Maybe it's your company store. There's different levels of comfort. The facilities may or may not be posh, etc., etc. So what this means is that the physical environment actually shapes the perception of who you are as a company quite a lot, but it also shapes the customer's experience with your company quite a lot. Ideally, of course, that should match who you want to be seen as a company. Like what is your positioning and what is your segmentation. So these are the 7 key elements of the marketing mix. It's a mix of elements. They should be implemented in an orchestrated fashion. What's important to consider is that, of course, it should be orchestrated with the marketing strategy, but it also depends upon rivals' behavior, global considerations, cultural issues, religion, etc. in some nations. So depending on who you are, these type of elements, as they are implementing the strategy, should breathe basically the norms and the institutional elements of your particular geography. So now, building on these 7 Ps, you might ask yourself, are there more interesting ways, more creative ways of engaging in your marketing? Everyone can spend the normal amount of money in order to implement its marketing. But, the smart people spend imagination instead of money. And that means, maybe let's find unconventional ways of pursuing the conventional goals, meaning achieving sales, achieving market penetration. And that can actually trickle down to all the marketing mix elements. Oftentimes, guerrilla marketing is an approach that is used mostly with communication, sometimes with pricing, sometimes with product issues, sometimes with distribution issues. But most often, they are interesting ways of communicating your product, communicating about its benefits, communicating about its availability, etc., that will then make a splash in the marketplace. In other words, you're finding ways in order to, with little efforts, make a big splash. And that means you need to be creative, because there are lots of people out there who are trying to do exactly that. So let me give you some intuition and maybe even some inspiration of what this means in terms of guerrilla marketing. This is one of my favorite examples. Actually, this is a company called Yock. Yock is a firm located in Berlin. It used to be a startup. It's now has grown up quite a bit. But in its early days, it faced a challenge that was actually quite a big challenge. They are a company that are providing mobile marketing services for firms. And when you think about it, well, they have a chicken-egg problem in a way, because where should they start? They do not have phone numbers of their customers, and they do not have references in terms of great marketing campaigns with which they could go to companies. So in a sense, they are lacking on all of these dimensions. So what they did in order to create awareness for their company and also to collect customer information is to create an event. So what's this crash or cash event that Yock engaged in? It's an event that they designed together with Radio Energy, a radio station in Berlin. And what they did is to say, okay, we have an interesting event happening out there on the Potsdamer Platz, which is right in the middle of Berlin. And we are doing the following. We have this Porsche 911, a wonderful Porsche hanging up there at 50 meters high. And people could vote with their cell phones whether this Porsche should crash, i.e. fall down these 50 meters, or whether some of the people, one person, would actually win, the car at the end, which means cash. There was an event, this bands with a large screen for status of the ballot, and the result was 53% said crash and 47% said cash. So you actually know what that meant. The Porsche fell down. I have a picture of that in a minute, but what I think what the important element here is, if you can think about it, with beyond just this entertainment factor. Of course, it's wonderful, and interesting to see this Porsche crashing. But on the other hand, they created a lot of attention for their startup, attention for their services. There was a huge media echo. And if you think about how much it cost them, It was the price for the Porsche. But beyond that, they had all the newspaper coverage they got, all the TV coverage that they got was a high multiple of what they actually expended for the Porsche. So in that sense, it was a very smart way. It was little expenses relative to the output and the outcome they were able to achieve. So in that sense, a guerrilla marketing event par excellence. And let me show you now what the Porsche looked like. It looked like this. You can still see, that the Porsche looks like a Porsche. It looks fairly okay still, considering that it just fell 50 meters. Here you see it on the crane. This is actually quite high, 50 meters. Just imagine that. So that's a guerrilla marketing event. Is that in the textbooks of marketing books? No, it's not there, because this is very much out of the scope. So it takes creativity, ingenuity to come up with something like this. But it's actually fun to do. Think about how your company might be able to benefit from some of these events or some of these approaches. So another interesting example of guerrilla marketing that might inspire you is Mothcloth. This is a social shopping community, and what they did is actually quite smart. They said, okay, we are naming our dresses after fashion influencers, namely other bloggers, and then these guys picked it up and blogged about it. So in that sense, in retrospect, it's a simple way of getting attention and spreading the word, but ex ante, before the fact, someone had to have this idea. So be creative, find new ways, find interesting ways to engage in guerrilla marketing. And here's an interesting example. It hurts a bit for the man standing here. It's called the Fuzz Wax Bar. This was a new bar that wanted to enter the market. So the question is, if you have a waxing bar, meaning you tear out all the hair on your body, to appear sexier, maybe if you want to call it that way, how do you create attention, awareness for your company? And this is what this bar did, the Fuzz Wax Bar. They sent a plastered man in wax down the streets of Toronto in order to be waxed by strangers. Not only did then the potential customers test the product, but they surely remember that experience. And if you look at those up here on the left, what they were quite smart in doing, each of these papers was actually a coupon. So get 25% off your next wax with this coupon. So they actually created lots of awareness in the environment where this wax bar was located. And here's another example. It's a company called Varus Teleka. They are selling Finnish army surplus products to the public. And what they did to create awareness for the company was the following. They sent an open letter in the form of a video to Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yes, the I'll be back guys, who has been lots of videos with lots of guns, so you see the association. And they invited him to visit the store and introduce the staff and the products. In that sense, it was not a lot of effort that they did, but they had the idea. And this was then picked up by the international press, who said, oh, this is an interesting story to report about. And if you look at the YouTube video, there it had more than 600,000 clicks at the time we looked at it. And if you look at it as well, this has many more clicks in a few minutes. And then here are some more examples. I don't walk you through all of these by one, but just look at them. It's very creative ways, very innovative ways to even market some existing products. So of course, this is not only a domain that entrepreneurial startups are engaging in nowadays. It's also a domain that established companies have discovered for themselves, because they want to see more effects, better outcomes based on their marketing expenditures. And the traditional ways are just not enough to get the attention of customers anymore. So this brings us already to the end of an interesting and also, I think, funny type of segment here. Let's just recap with a couple of points that I want you to remember. First, the marketing mix is the vehicle for you to implement your marketing strategy. We talked about this repeatedly. The marketing strategy provides the guidelines for an orchestrated implementation. It will make it much easier for you to find a coherent way of actually designing and implementing your marketing mix elements. And we talked about some creative low-cost approaches that are often key to startup success. As a company, as a young company, you often lack resources, and guerrilla marketing might be one way of actually getting a lot out of limited resources. So ultimately, like in more generally entrepreneurship, but in particular here, spend imagination instead of money. And enjoy that intellectual challenge. See you next time.